أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا استعينوا بالصبر والصلاة إن الله مع الصابرين. ولا تقولوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون. ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين. وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. صدق الله العلي العظيم. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ثانية لحب فاطمة الزهراء عليها السلام بأعلى أصواتكم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ثالثا لتعجيل فرج صاحب العصر والزمان بأعلى أصواتكم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم، لا سيما بقية الله روحي وأرواح العالمين لمقدمه الفداء. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. من المؤمنين رجال صدقوا ما عاهدوا الله عليه، فمنهم من قضى نحبه ومنهم من ينتظر وما بدلوا تبديلا. صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. إخواني الأعزاء، السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله. I don't know if there's any sisters in some other. There is. Assalamu alaikum. Likewise to the respected sisters. Well, first of all, congratulations on the birth anniversary of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida, which, as you know, is tied to our Majlis as well tonight. عظم الله أجوركم for the really sad occasion and the tragic event that we are really gathering to mark. I think the entire, maybe not entire, but much of the Muslim world has been affected by this latest tragedy and the painful loss. Inshallah, tonight I'm going to just touch on this event, and hopefully we can derive some lessons for us. Yani, if there was no lessons for us, then you would question really what's the value of our majlis. There's always, of course, a value in a majlis for Ahlul Bayt. However, we need to have something to take home with us, inshallah. Yes? And yani, it's my challenge tonight to actually share something. ببركة الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل. The first thing that I thought about when the plane of As-Sayyid Ra'isi rahmatullah alayhi fell life after death. Because usually these two come together, especially in Islam. Believing in a creator and a life after death. Why, Mr. Atheist, are you so adamant that there is no God, there is no creator, there is no life after death? Have you ever died and visited that world? Or died and seen what's beyond death? Where you say, Yalla, I died, there was nothing there, you came back to tell all of us? But it is you, Mr. Atheist, that says, I don't believe anything until I see it. I need to examine it with a microscope. طيب. So how can you deny that which you have not seen? Very logical argument. Yani, it's not very complex. Just look. At the very least say, I'm not sure. At the very least say, look mate, I'm not sure. Maybe there is life after death, maybe there isn't. And so this gives us a very good starting point with disbelievers. To begin with this premise that, are you sure about your life or lack of life after death? And you begin from that point. So at the very least, there should be no atheists in this world. And perhaps there isn't really. Deep down, they are agnostic. Yes, you know what agnostic is? Agnostic is someone who is not sure. He says 50-50. Maybe there is a life after death, maybe there isn't. Maybe there's a creator, maybe there isn't. Yes? That's the very least what they should be. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. And mind you, when I said that, have you, Mr. Atheist, died and looked beyond and said, there's nothing there, and come back to tell us? That is actually happening every single day. But the result is that there is the conclusion that is directly opposite, which is that I died and I visited, and there was a life after death. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look up in your free time, near-death experience. Yes, I'm sure many of you have heard of this. NDEs. Near-death experiences are happening every single day, no matter whether you're a Muslim or non-Muslim, which country you're from, white, black, brown. It's happening to people around the world every single day. And when you look up online near-death experiences, you will see these reports from across the world. One of them was actually published, I believe, on the BBC. Now, in the past, we would say BBC and people would believe you. But the BBC is not trustworthy anymore, unfortunately, and I don't know when it ever was. But it had, at least on some topics, some credibility, yes? They published this documentary of a lady who was a singer, a white lady. She used to sing. And she had a family, And then she had a brain tumor in the middle of her brain. Yani, to get to it and remove it, they had to drill in her skull. And she says, look, most likely I'm a dead woman. But I gave it a go. It's better than just accepting death. Yes? And submitting to the illness. So she goes through this whole process. But she dies while the operation, apparently she dies while the operation is ongoing. And then she says, I leave my body. My soul, or whatever it is, she doesn't say it like that. She says, I suddenly see myself looking at my body in the operation theater. And I see the doctor who's working on me. And I notice all the tools on the table that the doctor is using. And I looked at my body and I said, how terrible. You look so terrible. You're so ill and sick. And she then rises up and leaves the world. She sees some light. She goes up. And she's narrating this. And she says, I go and I see uncle, great uncle, ma baraf min, and all my loved ones that had passed away. And then she's so happy and enjoying her time. And then one of her uncles or relatives pushes her back, and she falls back into this world and into her body. Now, the unique thing about this near-death experience is that the doctor can verify what she says. The doctor says that when she told me what was in the theater, we had closed her eyes, we had blocked her ears, so she doesn't feel a thing or doesn't even hear anything by mistake or see anything by mistake. She says, she describes everything in the theater, everything in the operation theater that she could not and should not have been able to see or experience. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So the first point was that death is something universal. It has to happen to everyone. The second point is that death is inevitable, right? So it happens to every living thing, but it also has to happen. حتمي. It has to happen. And we have many ayat. وَكُنَّا نُكَذِّبُ بِيَوْمِ الدِّينِ حَتَّى أَتَانَا الْيَقِينِ. Yaqeen in this ayah especially refers to death. You know what yaqeen means, yes? In general, it means certainty. But yaqeen is one of the names of death. Why? Because it's certain. So they say, we used to deny Yawm al-Din, where they were disbelievers, these particular people in the Quran. And then they say, Hatta atana al-yaqeen, until death comes to us or came to us. For death is something that has to happen. Now, the third thing I want to say about death, and I'm going to tie it to the tragic incident, is that death is mysterious. There are so many aspects of death that are unknown to us. Masalan, where will I die? You know, one of the things I was thinking about was Sayyid Ra'isi. Who would have thought that he would have passed away in a plane crash? And in such circumstances, and at this particular time, and in such a manner. And then I thought to myself, Hussain, one day you will die, but what type of death is it? What is your death? What is written on your, or what will be written on your death certificate? He died while, masalan, being ill from this disease. Or masalan, he died, and you name it. What is your cause of death? What is your cause of death? When is the date of your death? Now you may say, death. La, in the narrations we have that death, dhikrul maut, rahmah. Remembering and the remembrance of death is a blessing. Whereas in secular society, you know what death is, right? Remembrance of death is a calamity. It's antisocial. You shouldn't talk about it much. If you hear about someone dying, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Oh, by the way, you know, and they try to lighten each other up by forgetting about it. La, in Islam, we should remember death. And the more we remember, the more the barakat and blessings rain down on us. So we don't know where we're going to die. We don't know when we're going to die. We don't know how we're going to die. So we are advised in the Quran that we should make sure that in every state we are Muslims and true believers. This was the wasiyah of Nabi Ibrahim, Nabi Yaqub, all the prophets. But in the Quran it's mentioned. Nabi Ibrahim, Nabi Yaqub would sit with their sons and they would say, Ya baniyya inna Allah astafa lakum ad-din فَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. O my sons, Allah has chosen this religion. Do not die unless you are Muslims. Now the problem is, we don't know when. We don't know when we're going to die. And we can't afford to die in the wrong state. We're out at a gathering, about a wrong place, or, you know, I'm in a certain state of sinfulness. Well, I'm talking about myself. I need to be awake that it could happen at any moment. It could happen at any moment. The fourth aspect is that death is part of the system that Allah has created for this world to try us. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور. This is the final phase of our trial in this world. When death arises, that's the end of it. But we have many riwayat that at the moment of death, we have an examination as well. We have the shaitan that comes and tries to lure us one final time. And we have a number of trials that occur, which I don't have the time to discuss. But once one dies, that's the end. There's no more ability to do good in the world, unless of course he's left behind certain good deeds and certain sadaqah jariyah. But in general, khalas, the file is closed. Yalla, we're going to account for this person. Hussain Kobeissi has died, that's it. So it forms the final phase of the trial. لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا. And something like this, which forms the final phase, and its timing and manner has been hidden, and also that what's beyond it is unknown. What's beyond it is unknown. And it's one thing to say, look, mate, I don't believe in a life after death. But what if this individual dies and he sees the next world? He sees the next world. I'm thinking of certain urafat and mystical scholars that they were so close to death and the veils of this dunya apparently had been lifted and they became silent. They became silent because of what they could see. And things that are indescribable, they can't be described by the language of this world. And so we have no knowledge and we are filled with fear. Those who don't know what awaits them, apart from reading from the Quran and from the Hadith, but really having that deep knowledge about the next world, they have that fearfulness. They have that fearfulness that what is awaiting me? Is it annihilation? Is it a certain reality? What type of reality? And so many people fear it. Many people fear death. But in this scenario, we have two options. Yeah, not five. I'm not saying five. Two options. The first is to deny death, to ignore it, to live your life. There's a phrase they use which I won't say, but yalla, live your life. Sah? We didn't have that phrase back then, but yeah, you only live once. Yeah, it seems to be something that goes around. It's quite satanic. Yani yalla, you only live once. Go, habibi, ruh. Enjoy your life. That's the first option. Deny death, ignore it. But look what Quran says. أَفَأَمِنُوا مَكْرَ اللَّهِ فَلَا يَأْمَنُ مَكْرَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا الْقَوْمُ الْخَاسِرُونَ. Are these people feeling secure from the plan of Allah? No one feels secure from the plan of Allah except those who are losers. Those who will lose and will be perished. And they will have no goodness in the next world. The other option is that we prepare for it. We prepare for it. The wise man, he says, at the very least, even if they're not believers, maybe there is a life after death. Let me look into the religion. Wallah, it's a height of arrogance to say, you religious people, what are you talking about life after death? Habibi, what are you even doing in this world? Can you describe your own existence? Can you describe your own miraculous life and the fact that you exist and you have no understanding of where you came from? What if there is a life after death? That's at one level. But us as believers, we prepare for it. We say it's inevitable. My life, as I know it, will end when it occurs. It can occur at any moment. We've just discussed these things. And what awaits is an eternal unseen world, or realms, or worlds. And I don't know about that world. The only thing I know as a believer, really, is that my belief and my actions will shape the type of world I live in. But there's a higher level than even this. And that higher level is someone that has even more wisdom. And what he says is that I'm going to meet death head on. I'm going to prepare myself for death to the extent that I long for it. Atamannaha. Like I wish to meet death. I wish to meet it. And we have in Surah Al-Jum'ah, which we read on the day of Jum'ah, قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ هَادُوا, God's chosen people, the ones who claim they're God's chosen people, still today. قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ هَادُوا إِن زَعَمْتُمْ أَنَّكُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ لِلَّهِ مِن دُونِ النَّاسِ فَتَمَنَّوُا الْمَوْتَ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. If you truly believe you're God's chosen people, you're God's favorites, then wish for death. Long for death, O Jews. وَلَا يَتَمَنَّوْنَهُ أَبَدًا بِمَا قَدَّمَتْ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ بِالظَّالِمِينَ. They will never wish for death because of what their hands have wrought, their actions and their disbelief, and the fact that they fear death itself and what comes after it. This type of higher level wisdom can be encapsulated in a famous hadith that many of you might have heard before. And that hadith is mentioned in Shia and Sunni books. It's very famous. The only thing that changes really is the name of this young man that it happens to. In the hadith that I'm narrating from, it's from Biharul Anwar, and the man's name is Haritha. Yes? So Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, استقبل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم حارثة. And he said to him, Rasulullah meets this man, young man named Harith or Haritha, and he says, كيف أنت يا حارثة? How are you doing, Haritha? And he says, يا رسول الله أصبحت مؤمنا حقا. I've become a true believer. فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم يا حارثة لكل شيء حقيقة فما حقيقة يقينك. For every claim you need to provide evidence, especially a claim that you are a true believer. What is your evidence, يا حارثة? And he says, يا رسول الله عزفت نفسي عن الدنيا وأسهرت ليالي وأظمأت هواجري. I have no more interest in the dunya, and even in the nights I stay up awake, unable to fall asleep, and I don't really have much interest for eating and drinking anymore. وكأني أنظر إلى عرش ربي وقد وضع للحساب. It's as if I can see the arsh of Allah, in that the veils of the dunya have begun to be removed from Haritha's soul and the eyes of his soul. He can see the next world. It's as if, he says, كأني, I'm seeing the next world. وكأني أنظر إلى أهل الجنة يتزاورون وكأني أسمع عواء أهل النار في النار. It's as if he can see it but not very clearly. Yeah, it's different levels of being able to see the next world while you're in this world. It's as if I see the people of paradise visiting each other, and I see the wailing of the people of the fire in the fire. فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم عبد نور الله قلبه للإيمان. This is a servant that Allah has illuminated his heart with faith. Truly, he has spoken the truth. And he tells this young man to protect what he has. And the man says, Ya Rasulullah, pray for me that I become a shaheed. Khalas, he wants to go to the next world. And he says, Ya Allah, urzuq haritha shahada. Grant this young man shahada. And soon after there is a battle, and this young man joins it against the kuffar, yani, and he fights, he kills a few of the enemies, and then he becomes الشهيد صلوا على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل. I meant to share these to say that the best thing that we can do, Ya Hussain, the best thing that you can do is to try to strive to have this kashf, this unveiling. I don't know, brothers, how much you understand what these words mean, but your soul has eyes as well. When you dream and you have a real dream, you can see parts of the next world, yes? I'm sure many of you have experienced it. Even if you're not dreaming, you can reach certain levels where you can see the next world. And so we, inshallah, strive to meet death in a way that we've already seen the life after death, and we long to meet it. Another aspect of the tragic event of the falling of the plane of Sayyid Raisi rahmatullah alayh and his companions is this deep sadness. I ask myself, so on the one hand we have these lessons about death and the remembrance of death. On the other we have this deep sadness. Millions of people around the world, and you saw the funeral processions. Tens of millions of people in Iran, but the sadness across the Islamic world and across the world. What is the reason, I asked, for this man, especially Sayyid Raisi and of course his companions, but for this man to have such hearts that have been affected by his passing? Perhaps it's because Sayyid Raisi was a scholar of religion. And we have hadith that says that a scholar is, a true scholar, is such that if you look at him, it's ibadah. النظر في وجه العالم عبادة. And so when a true scholar passes away, this leaves a gap, this leaves a vacuum, and this leaves a great sadness. But perhaps it's also because he was a Sayyid. And a Sayyid who's a scholar and is on the right path, one of the grandsons of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it saddens us. But perhaps also this deep sadness is because he was the president of the Islamic Republic of Iran. This Islamic Republic, which is the only Islamic government truly in the world, or to be safe, the only Islamic government that follows the path and the school of the Ahlul Bayt in the world. And so when naturally the president of such a country passes away and in such a tragic fashion, then naturally many people will be saddened. But also perhaps it's because someone like Sayyid Raisi, and according to the leader himself, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei, he was someone that served the people. Yeah? When you serve the people, you serve the Muslims, you serve your brothers and sisters, and even non-Muslims. When you serve people, yes, for the sake of Allah, the people begin to have affection for you. He was serving the people, he was serving his country, the Islamic Republic, and he was serving Islam. Perhaps it was also because he was a khadim of our master Ali ibn Musa al-Rida. I'm sure all of you, or many of you, know that he was in charge of managing the shrine of Imam Musa, Ali ibn Musa al-Rida alayhi salam. And what a beautiful shrine. Ya Allah, may inshallah you all be blessed to visit if you haven't already, and even if you have. Inshallah with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. My time is running out, but inshallah I won't take too much more of your time. This Sayyid Raisi was a servant, and maybe one of the signs that he was truly a servant, apart from everything else that I've mentioned already, is the fact that he became president of Iran on which day? They say on the birth anniversary of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida 3 years ago. And he left this world in that tragic incident on the birth anniversary of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida. I don't think these are accidental details. But also, perhaps because Sayyid Ra'isi was a symbol and a great support for the Madhlumeen wal Muttahadeen, the oppressed people in the world, and especially in the Islamic world. From Gaza and Palestine, to Lebanon, to Syria, to Iraq, to Yemen, to Afghanistan, to Bahrain, to wherever, many places. He was that symbol. He represents this support for the Madhlumeen. And perhaps even further than that, he was a symbol because you had non-Muslim states that were sending condolences, and I understand that it's part of the protocol. But there was a sense of sadness even in many world countries and their leaders, because he represented a new world. I don't know how many of you follow politics or understand much about this, but Iran today, led by Sayyid Ra'isi at that time, represented a new world in which not one state rules by force and based on its interests. And you know what state I'm talking about. Yes? The States, as they say. The United States, which says it's a rule-based world, but it's my rules. Yes? My way or the highway. And we've seen the last 20, 30 years how much destruction they have wrought and corruption in the world. Sayyid Ra'isi represented a new world in which nations have sovereignty. Nations speak and resolve their differences through diplomacy and not through war and destruction. Where nations respect each other. Where nations together can manage the world and not one nation. And perhaps because of what Sayyid Ra'isi had of potential to be a future leader, even beyond being the president of Iran. In any case, for these reasons and other reasons, we must believe and remember two principles. As Muslims, we believe in the following. The first one is that لا مؤثر في الوجود إلا الله. Our teacher, my teacher, recently gave this talk and he mentioned these 2 points, and I think we must mention them. That nothing occurs in this world except with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even and including the falling of the plane and the crash and the loss of this great scholar and leader at this apparently untimely moment, it was by the permission of Allah, in the presence of Allah. Allah allowed it to occur, and there was a wisdom in it. And that's the next principle, that Allah gives permission for everything and gives the power for things to occur. No action, لا مؤثر في الوجود إلا الله, means that no action occurs without the permission and power of Allah Azza wa Jal. But the other principle that our teacher mentioned was that Allah is Hakim. He is all-wise. And there must be a wisdom in what occurred a few days ago. There must be endless amounts of wisdom because Allah is the infinitely all-wise. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now you may be feeling tired because I definitely am, and you poor fellas need to hear my voice. And mashallah, it's very cozy in here. It feels very soothing, at least, alhamdulillah. But I want to mention this point that inshallah you can take home with you. If you haven't taken anything so far, please take the following. That from this tragic event, I asked myself, what is my plan? What is my life project? Some of you may be looking at me, you're still young, in your late teens, my wife, how old you are, early 20s, and thinking, what's a project? What are you talking about? Sayyid Ra'isi didn't become Sayyid Ra'isi if in his teens he had no plan. In his teens he had a plan. He had a plan for his dunya, he had a plan for his akhirah, because they're tied together. Right? So I ask, what is my plan? And hella, when we're all leaving, when we say our farewells to each other, just think about it in the car when you have some time. What's your plan? What's my plan? What is my project in this world? And you meet many people who their project is very, very limited to the material aspects of this world. I was recently having a gathering, and I noticed one of the brothers that when you spoke to him about how much this cost and how much that cost and this new carpet and this new mobile, his eyes light up, he becomes more interested in the conversation. When you start talking about other matters, becomes a bit less interested. This is a negative sign for that brother, that he's more interested in the material. What is my plan for this world, for this life, and the next life? الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا. But also Allah says, أحسب الناس أن يتركوا أن يقولوا آمنا وهم لا يفتنون. We must be tested in this world, and we are being tested. But also God says, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Your test is not like Sayyid Raisi. My test is not like yours. We will all be tested, but only according to our capacity. But what is our capacity? Why put limits on what you think your capacity is? Yeah, I want to get married, which is a very good goal. I want to get married, do some work, وكذا وكذا. That's it. That's your goal. Yeah, I want to, very, very small, narrow thinking. Of course, getting married today is a big achievement, by the way. And having a halal rizq is a big achievement in this country. I'm not belittling that, but I'm saying broaden the horizons. Serving the Imam Al-Mahdi Ajallahu Ta'ala Farja, this requires a big thinking. What can I do today that serves the Imam and raises my station? Because you know, brothers and sisters, that heaven is not one level. First of all, Allah is separating the good doers and the evil doers. So Hussain is not guaranteed to be even in the paradise. Even in the paradise. So Hussain, make sure, and I say Hussain, and you exchange your name for mine, that you're not even guaranteed to have a good future in the next world. But let's assume that I do have that future. The levels in paradise are not the same. One of the ulama, he mentioned this story, and he says, in fact, his wife, his grandfather was a Arif. He was a mystical scholar. Anyway, they see this lady, or her mother sees a dream of the grandmother. So you have to understand the chain. Muhim. And she asks her, oh mother, how's father doing? They both had passed away. How's father doing? Are you seeing him? And the mother says that your father is like the earth, people of earth looking at the stars. He's so far up. And whenever I want to visit your father, it's not in my hands to visit him. Husband and wife, Muslim, Shia, whatever you like. But this one had a station and his wife had a lower station. And she says, I have to wait for him to come and visit us. And it was like between the earth and the heavens. So brothers and sisters, let's try to reassess our lives and ask ourselves, what is my mashru'? What is my project? What is my capacity? And what are my limits? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I just want to end with this and say, before a majlis, I want to say that we only have one life, and we only have a few years of youth. Very soon, many of you will get in your 20s, and then in your 30s, and then you would have been married, and then you would have had kids, and your ability to make decisions would be getting smaller and smaller. And so, for example, recently I was just dealing with an issue in which one of the brothers, he said that when I chose my marriage and when I did get married, I didn't make the best decisions. And now he's complaining that what did I do with my life, and I made the wrong decision, and kada kada. And there's only so much you can do to help him. And he has children. And my brother, where were you when you were making those decisions? Where were you when you were thinking about a spouse? Where was your religious faith? Where was your Islamic culture and your priorities? It happens in the blink of an eye. And so, to attain that greatness in this world and the next, like the companions of Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam, it needs a decision. Somewhere it needs a decision. And the older you get, the less likely you will make that decision. And your heart and your soul is being shaped into a particular direction. It's very hard to then turn. Like al-Hurr on the day of Ashura. The earlier you make the decision to improve your life and to purify your soul, the better. In modern times, we see the great shuhada rising to the heavens. And we see the brave heroes who defend the front lines and the sanctities of Islam, and the Muslim women and children from the aggressors and the usurpers and enemies. We see the ulama, and the salihin, and the mu'mineen, and those who strive in the way of Allah. You're seeing them. You're seeing them with your eyes. And you're seeing the miracles that they are performing. And you're seeing the miracles that they leave behind in their funerals and in their legacies. All of them have attained their various ranks and their various glories. We too, each to our own abilities, brothers and sisters, can attain certain ranks of greatness and glory in this world and the next, by being servants of Allah, by purifying our souls, and by seeking that pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the master of the kingdom, who gives the kingdom to whomsoever He pleases and takes away the kingdom from whomsoever He pleases. This is Quran. وَتُعِزُّ مَن تَشَاءُ وَتُذِلُّ مَن تَشَاءُ. He honors whom He pleases and abases whom He pleases. بِيَدِكَ الْخَيْرِ إِنَّكَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. In your hand is all goodness, and indeed you have power over all things. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Just a few words, inshallah, as a type of majlis. I'm sure many of you were attentively and anxiously following the news, yes? When you first heard that the plane of Sayyid Raisi had fallen off the radar. And you were looking, think about this if you were one of these people. You were looking for any signs of hope that Sayyid Raisi and his companions will still be somehow alive. Somehow they were holding on to dear life, and that the rescue teams will come and help them. But then gradually, as the time went on, and it was like 16 hours until they found where the plane crashed. As the hours went on, you knew with every new piece of information, it was becoming clearer and clearer that the dear Sayyid could not possibly have survived, nor could his companions. And then there was that moment when the search teams arrived to the site of the crash, and you had those few seconds of video, yeah? Those few seconds of video that you saw, and you just knew it. Your eyes desperately followed the footage to see, even in that site crash, was Sayyid Raisi somewhere? Did he leave the site? Was there possibly a chance that maybe they were still alive? Perhaps Sayyid was injured. Perhaps he was lying beneath a bush somewhere from the freezing cold, and he was holding on to dear life and waiting for someone to help him. Hajaga, Hajaga, Hajaga. You hear the calls of the rescue teams. Sayyid, Sayyid, are you here, ya Sayyid? Perhaps Sayyid was bleeding somewhere under a tree, or holding on to his wounds for all of these hours. And then at that moment in the video, if you saw it, with no answer to their calls, the voices of the search crew begin to change. They begin to crack. And the first thing they say is, Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain. That was the first thing that they said. And when you hear the name of Hussain, you know, and especially in such a situation, that there was only one occurrence before us. Weeping profusely, they said, Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain. In one of the videos that is now spreading online, Sayyid Raisi describes the situation of Aba Abdullah, his great-grandfather, Aba Abdullah al-Hussain in Karbala, just before our holy Imam is to be brutally killed and his blessed neck will be severed. إلهي رضا بقضائك تسليما لأمرك. Oh Allah, I'm content with your decree, quoting Imam al-Hussain. Oh Allah, I am content with your decree and I submit to your command. لا معبود سواك. There is no being worthy of worship other than you. يا غياث المستغيثين. إلهي إن الحسين راد بما يرضيك أنت. Ya Allah, Hussain is satisfied with whatever satisfies you. This was the rank of rida and contentment that Aba Abdullah al-Hussain enjoyed at the severest moment of trials on the day of Ashura. Sayyid Raisi himself would say, don't cry for my likes, don't cry for the likes of me. A true follower of Ahlul Bayt, as a true follower, he says that if we are ever to weep and we are ever to cry over anything in this world, we should weep over the tragedy of Aba Abdullah al-Hussain in Karbala. فعلى الأطائب من أهل بيت محمد وعلي صلى الله عليهما وآلهما فليبكي الباكون وإياهم فليندب النادبون. For the likes of the household of Muhammad and Ali, if one wishes to cry, let him weep and cry over Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. ولمثلهم فلتذرف الدموع وليصرخ الصارخون ويضج الضاجون ويعج العاجون. For their likes, for the likes of Ali Muhammad, let the lamenters lament and let the tears shed, and let those who scream, scream, and let those who wish to yell, yell in agony and wail. أين الحسن أين الحسين أين أبناء الحسين صالح بعد صالح وصادق بعد صادق أين السبيل بعد السبيل أين الخيرة بعد الخيرة أين الشموس الطالعة أين الأقمار المنيرة أين الأنجم الزاهرة أين أعلام الدين وقواعد العلم أين بقية الله التي لا تخلو من العترة الهادية؟ ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون. إن شاء الله لقضاء الحوائج، وإن شاء الله for the souls of all of the marhumin, your marhumin, and especially the soul of Sayyid Raisi and his companions, and for all of the oppressed around the world, especially in Palestine and Gaza, in Lebanon, and in the region. 5 times Amma Yujib, and then a salawat and a fatiha. A'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. 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 إن شاء الله دعاء الفرج، then فاتحة صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا محافظا تمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صلوات الله.